What is going on in Newcastle United right now? It looks like we are losing a lot of players. Anthony Gordon's gone to Barcelona. Sandro Tonali looks like he could be out the door pretty soon as well. There's talk of Bruno leaving Newcastle United as well. But I still think the Bruno one is a lot of just his agent trying to get Bruno a better deal in Newcastle on a contract. So don't read too much into the Bruno one. I don't see Bruno really moving away from Newcastle United, as I said in the last video I did. And I still haven't changed my stance on that yet. To be honest, I really don't see Bruno moving away from Newcastle United to go to anybody in the Premier League. If he was to go anywhere, it would probably be to maybe Real Madrid, but even then, it would have to be for a massive fee. And in my eyes, Bruno is a non-negotiable player. He has to stay at Newcastle United. The drive he has, the passion he has for this club, and the passion we have for Bruno, it just doesn't bear to think, that you can't get a player like Bruno anywhere else. Not with that kind of drive, not with that kind of passion and that love for the game. But moving away from, of course, that, we've seen, like I say, Gordon move off to Barcelona, and that now means that we've got to now find people to replace Gordon with. And looking at it, we're looking at the World Cup here, and a few players that I've been seeing throughout this World Cup that have stood out, put in some really good performances. And starting off with target one that PIF should be looking at, and I've talked about this lad before on the channel, Ousmane Diomande, the Ivory Coast defender. He is an absolute monster. My brother found him a while back on Football Manager, well before anybody even knew about this lad. And I've got to say, he would be a transformative player for our defence, especially with the defence aging like it is. Fabian Schär, of course, has signed a 1-year extension deal, so he'll be at the club for an extra season. I think, to be honest, it'll be Fabian Schär's last season. So bringing in somebody like an Ousmane Diomande, would be a huge coup, and it would be a massive replacement for Fabian Schär, of course. And like I say, he's an absolute monster, Diomande. Just look at what he's done, in his career, as we bring it up here on the screen. Only 22 years of age, Ivory Coast international, like I say. He's had 15 caps, of course, for the Ivory Coast as well. And looking at his career, I mean, here it is, last season, he played 4 games in the Taça de Portugal, in the Liga Portugal. He played 17 games, he got an assist. And in the Champions League last season, 9 games and a goal in the Champions League as well. But looking at his career over, 167 appearances he's had, he's scored 10 times, assisted 4 times, and he's got 12,873 minutes of football under his belt. That is absolutely impressive. And literally coming in at 1.90 meter as well. Tall, very tall guy. So for me, Ousmane Diomande would be a really, really good player to be coming in and taking over that place where Fabian Schär will be, letting loose off probably next season. Because I do think, next season will probably be when Fabian Schär retires from Newcastle United, and retires probably from football as well, if that's something that he wants to do, which, he's signed a 1-year extension. I think that probably is, the road that Fabs is going to go down. And like I say, Ousmane Diomande, you can't go wrong with that kind of player coming in as a replacement for Fabian Schär. So that's something that PIF should definitely be looking at. I don't think he cost all that much neither, with him currently playing at Sporting Lisbon. And we've got to strike whilst the iron's hot, though, and get in there quick, before any of them cartel teams get in there. 42 million euros, as you can see there, is his asking price in what he's being valued in the market. So if we could get him for around about that figure, then that is a really, really good deal. Obviously, we're not going to get the kind of deal that we got for Fabs, when Rafa was here You know, we're not going to get that kind of deal again, because that was an absolute steal at the time to bring a player in like Fabian Shaw, you know, for 3 odd million at the time. You know, just an absolute steal to get a player of that caliber for that kind of price. But to bring in somebody like an Osimhen Diomande for close to this 42 million euro fee would be really, really good. 22 years old as well, so he's still got plenty of time for the club. See, he was to stay with the club and would got Diomande to join, and he was to stay with the club for, you know, the next decade, that would be absolutely amazing. You know, that would be a hell of a defence for us. Would have the likes of Sven Botman in there, Mali Chow in there, and Osimhen Diomande. I mean, you can't tell me that that wouldn't be a absolutely world-class defence right there. But moving on away from Diomande, because we have talked about him enough already, we're moving on to another player that I think, you know, we should be looking at as well. Nico Williams, Inaki Williams' brother. Of course, Nico Williams at Athletic Bilbao, of course, a club that is huge friends with Newcastle United, and again, fitting right in with that profile of players that would be looking at, you know, in that younger demographic, and he'd be coming in as a replacement in my eyes for Anthony Gordon. He plays on that left wing. He's had 33 caps, 6 goals for the Spanish national team. And looking at what he's done last season in La Liga, 25 games in La Liga, 6 goals and 4 assists. And then, of course, the Copa del Rey, he played 4 games in, got 3 assists. And then, of course, 3 games in the Champions League as well last season for Athletic Bilbao. And looking at the season before that, of course, 29 games, 5 goals, 5 assists, and in the Europa League, 13, of course, and 5 goals and 2 assists with 13 appearances in the previous season in the Europa League. Overall, he's had 226 appearances, 46 goals, and 48 assists, and tallied up 15,203 minutes worth of football. That is pretty impressive when you consider that he is only at the age of 23, so he is starting to get into that point where he'll be getting to, you know, his prime years and approaching them prime years of a footballer. And I think, you know, 40 million euros, get him around about that fee. I think that would be a pretty decent deal to bring somebody in like Nico Williams. He's got the pace, he's got the power, he's got the know-how, he's got that fancy little flair as well, which gets you off your seat. Something that we haven't seen for a little while at Newcastle United. But it would be nice to see Nico Williams pulling on a black and white shirt, of course, next season. But PIF have got to move quick on it, because there will be a lot of players, a lot of clubs, sorry, in for this lad, because he is an absolute beast of a player when he gets going in the game. And then that brings us on to the last target, the third target, the elite statement. And I've talked about him many times before, and yes, it is Jonathan David, the Canadian striker. And I talked about him when he was a free, you know, going from Lille, and Juve ended up signing him, and I thought we should have been all over that deal when he was moving from Lille, and we just let it slip, we let it go, we didn't even bother to take a look, I don't think, to be honest. And it's a real shame, because looking at what he's doing in the World Cup for Canada, he is absolutely setting it alight up front for Canada in the World Cup. 80 caps for his international side, 42 goals. And I mean, this lad is absolutely brilliant. 26 years old, so he is, you know, a little bit higher up on that bracket of the players that would be looking at, but he's right in that area now for the prime years, you know, of a footballer. And looking at what he did in the Serie A last season, 35 appearances, of course, in the league, with 6 goals and 4 assists. Champions League 9 games, of course, 2 goals and 1 assist. And then look at what he did in the French league, of course, before joining Juve, 32 games, 16 goals and 5 assists. Champions League 10 games, 7 goals, 2 assists. And then, of course, you know, just brilliant numbers through in the French league. You know, he had a little bit of a problem last season in the Serie A, but he is showing that he does have that potential to be able to fire away the goals when he gets in front of goal. And looking at his overall tally, you know, 361 appearances, 154 goals, and 51 assists, tallying up a total minutes of 25,554 minutes of football for a 26-year-old. You know, that is a pretty impressive tally. And coming in at 1.78 meter as well in height isn't all that low. You know, so I think he'd be a really, really good player for Jonathan David. €30 million market value as well. I think we could probably get him around about that mark. Maybe he's a little bit below that mark. You know, say 20-25 million maybe would be a pretty decent fee. Might have to get a little bit closer on that, of course, but he'd be a really, really good player. You can't argue that he wouldn't be, you know, because Jonathan David is been putting in the numbers, as you can see there. Look at it, you know, look at the numbers that he's been putting in. At Lille and of course Juve, even when he struggled a little bit at Juve last season, you know, 6 goals, 4 assists, that's still really good numbers. Yeah, out of 35 games, it doesn't seem like good numbers, but when you add it up over the season, chuck in a few extra players getting goals and assists as well, you know, that all adds up to getting you into, you know, a top 4 place, top 3 place, possibly even, you know, if you can get the numbers matching on everybody else scoring in the team and assisting in the team as well, then, you know, who knows, you could maybe be an outside favourite for the Premier League title, and that is something that, you know, we want to be obviously pushing for. But for me, Jonathan David, definitely one that we should be looking at. So to just recap quickly, of course, Ousmane Diomande is target number 1. He would be, you know, the one that I would definitely go for on the defensive side of things, for show up that defence even more, give a better solid defence at the back. Nico Williams coming in as a replacement on the wings, of course, for Anthony Gordon's departure. And then Jonathan David, you know, the out-and-out striker, smack bang up top. He can even play on the wing as well, as he has proven, you know, scoring 5 goals in 5 appearances from the right wing and 1 goal in 2 appearances from the left wing. So he's proved that he can score, you know, Jonathan David from the wings as well. And Nico Williams as well, you know, left wing, 26 goals in 108 games, 17 goals in 76 games. Of course, 15 assists on the right wing and 31 assists on the left wing for Nico Williams. And then Ousmane Diomande is even bagged himself a few goals throughout as well in 162 games, 10 goals, 4 assists. So, you know, it's definitely players that I would be looking at. Ousmane Diomande, Nico Williams, and of course Jonathan David. Definitely players that, you know, PIF should be taking a good hard look at, and I don't think they would cost all that much money neither. But let us know your thoughts down in the comments below as we push on to try and reach the goal for this season on the channel, of course, which is 10k subscribers on the channel. And let us know what you think, of course, on these targets. And of course, I've got to say, the game against Panama last night, 2-0 win for England. We'll go through, of course, the knockout rounds now as we head into the last 32, I believe it is. And, you know, it looks like we are going to be taking on DR Congo. So it's going to be Johan Wissa up against, of course, a few of our lads, of course, in that England team, up against the likes of Dan Burn, Anthony Gordon, former mags as well of Anthony Gordon and Elliot Anderson in there as well. So it's going to be an interesting one, and I can't wait to see, you know, what happens in that game against DR Congo when we take them on coming up soon. But till next time, see you all later, and hot weather, lads.